HarperCollins Children's Books presents Thursday's Child by Noel Streatfeild, read by Lucy Scott. Monday's child is fair of face, Tuesday's child is full of grace, Wednesday's child is full of woe, Thursday's child has far to go. Friday's child is loving and giving, Saturday's child works hard for a living, and the child that is born on the Sabbath day is bonny and blithe and good and gay. Chapter 1. The Choice. Margaret had been discovering all her life that grown-ups were disappointing conversationalists, so now that she was 10, she was prepared to carry on a conversation by herself. That January afternoon, as she walked, or sometimes forgetting it was a crime, skipped home beside Hannah, she argued about boots. "I know you say, and Miss Sylvia and Miss Selina say that boots are economical because they last longer, but I don't think that's true. All the other girls at school wear shoes, and they say they don't wear out quickly, and they ought to know. And what nobody understands is what wearing boots does to me. They humiliate my legs. If I wasn't me but a different person, they would humiliate me all over, but not even boots can do that. I am Margaret Thursday and unhumiliatable." Hannah, her mind worrying round like a squirrel in a cage, had not been listening to a word Margaret said. Now she pulled her to a halt in a shop doorway. "Let's have a look at you, dear. You were to have tea with the rector." Hannah was a bony woman, made bonier by wearing long, stiff, all-embracing corsets which creaked. She had worked for Miss Sylvia and Miss Selina Cameron most of her life, having first come to the house when she was 13, as a between maid. She had sobbed herself sick before she went, much to her mother's annoyance. "Give over, do," she had said. "What have you got to cry about with everything so nice?" The everything had been packed in Hannah's wicker basket, material provided by Mrs. Cameron, but sewn by Hannah and her mother. Such riches! Print dresses, black dresses for the afternoon, aprons, caps, and, of course, an outfit for church on Sundays. The Camerons had been kind to her, which was why Hannah had stayed with the family. There had been periods when she had got so far as walking out with one or other of the men servants, but things had happened. First, Mr. Cameron had died. Mrs. Cameron was the helpless type, and she had clung to Hannah, who had by then risen to being parlour-maid, as though to a rock. For some reason, which Hannah had never understood, after Mr. Cameron's death there was less and less money. Slowly, changes had to be made. Not at once, but over the years. First the men servants, then the cook and her assistants were given notice, until finally, except for a man once a week for the garden, there was only Hannah. When Hannah had first come to work for the Camerons, Miss Sylvia had been 20 and Miss Selina 18. In those days they had been known as those pretty Cameron girls. Now Hannah was over 60, so Miss Sylvia was over 70, and Miss Selina rising 70, and they were known as the old Cameron ladies. Hannah had, almost since she was a baby, carefully taught Margaret how to be a good housewife. Her efforts had little effect, for Margaret loathed dusting, polishing, and sweeping, and as for laundry, she just would not try. But Hannah's efforts were not altogether a failure, for she had taught Margaret to cook. Often Hannah found herself so tired at the end of the day she could scarcely drag herself up to bed, but it had never crossed her mind to give in her notice. Miss Sylvia, always the delicate one, was getting very frail, and poor Miss Selina ever so hazy in her mind. Anyway, Saltmarsh House, where they lived, was her home. She could not imagine living anywhere else. Now Hannah's bony, work-roughened fingers attempted to tidy Margaret's hair. This was chestnut-coloured and very curly, so not at all easy to control. Margaret tried to wriggle out of Hannah's reach. She loved the rector, but was surprised to be going to tea with him, for he was not the sort of man to give sudden invitations. "Why am I going to tea with the rector?" she asked, still trying to pull away from Hannah. "Please leave my hair alone. You know the rector isn't the sort of person who cares how people look." "Tidiness shows respect," said Hannah. She stood away from Margaret to see the whole effect. Margaret was dressed as simply
Sample complete. Ready to continue?